I think many people were expecting the Kansas City Chiefs to take a bit of a step back in 2014. I know I most certainly fell into that category. They had a nice bounce back season in 2013, making the playoffs under new head coach Andy Reid. But that offseason didn't seem to be all that kind to them, and I thought that this was going to be a team that won 5 or 6 games. Well, to their credit, they didn't fall apart. They didn't take a step back. They were at least able to kind of tread water and hold the fort. And against a tougher schedule, they found a way to still go 9-7. At one point in time, this was a really hot team that really had all their cylinders cooking. However, then reality started to catch up with this team, and you could quite see, especially when they got blown out by the Broncos, that this was a team that's not quite ready for prime time just yet. So 2 straight seasons of winning records under Andy Reid, but at the end of the day, what has this team really accomplished? One embarrassing playoff loss, and then not going back to the playoffs the next year. And you look at the Chiefs and their draft history, and you've seen some hits, guys like Justin Houston, a former third-round pick, guys like Dontari Poe, their first-round pick in 2012, and frankly, they got a lot of criticism for taking him because he was more athlete than football player, and he's most certainly panned out. Their third-round pick from 2013, Travis Kelce, when he got opportunities in 2014, he showed himself very, very well, showed himself to be the most explosive weapon outside of Jamal Charles in that Kansas City Chiefs offense. The problem is for the Kansas City Chiefs, again, is kind of why they find themselves in the middle of the road. It's too little, not enough, and some bad mistakes and some bad philosophical decisions. I mean, you look at their last 2 first-round picks. You talk about Dee Ford out of Auburn, the edge rusher, who didn't play hardly at all in 2014, and is stuck behind Justin Houston and Tamba Hali on the depth charts. You're talking about 2013, their number 1 overall selection, Eric Fisher, in that really weak class, has yet to really establish himself as a big-time left tackle at the NFL level. So their last 2 first-round picks, they really, frankly, haven't gotten much out of any good. Then you also have the question of 2010 first-round pick, Eric Berry. Well, I don't question them ever taking him in the top 5. My question is with his illness, what is he going to be able to do? Is he going to be able to come back and play? And if he is, will he be able to come back and play at a level of what you would have expected an Eric Berry to play at when healthy? But then you look at the big miss of their 2011 first-round pick, Jonathan Baldwin. I mean, so you're talking about 2011, they got nothing out of that first-round pick. 2013, they haven't gotten a lot out of that. 2014, they basically got nothing out of that. Right now, as an organization, they're getting nothing out of their 2010 first-round pick, too. Circumstances and a situation that nobody could really control, obviously. But then you look at the Alex Smith trade. So you compound some of that by trading away 2 second-round picks for a middle-of-the-road average NFL starter. Middle-of-the-road average starter. There are 2 types of teams in the NFL. Those that have a franchise quarterback, those that don't. The Kansas City Chiefs, no matter how much certain fans and certain members of the media like you to believe, do not have a franchise type of quarterback. Alex Smith is a veteran, game-managing type of middle-of-the-road, you're never really going to win anything big with him type of quarterback. And I stand by what I said 2 years ago about their trading for him, is that history repeats itself. The last time this Kansas City Chiefs organization drafted a quarterback in the first round was 1983. Now, obviously, that was a big-time bust because it was Todd Blackledge in a draft that had Jim Kelly and Dan Marino still to come off the board. But the problem is this team hasn't addressed the quarterback position in the first round in over 30 years. And how many playoff games have they won over the past 30-plus years? Could there be some type of tie-in and some type of correlation? Perhaps, I don't know. And for all this talk about how crappy the wide receivers were for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2014 and the fact that no wide receivers caught a touchdown pass last season for this team, could that in any way, shape, or form be a reflection of the dink and dunk guy you've got at the quarterback position? I mean, I'm sorry, not a single one. Yes, the wide receivers weren't that good, but maybe the quarterback wasn't that good either. You gave up 2 second-round picks for a middle-of-the-road guy. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's why the Chiefs find themselves in the position that they're in. They don't have a quarterback, therefore they need a quarterback, therefore they overspent in terms of draft pick compensation to get one when the 49ers really weren't in a position to have much leverage because they were going to go with Kaepernick long-term. There wasn't that much of a market for Alex Smith. I digress. I was right. Other people were wrong. Accepted. Now, in terms of this offseason, what they did. The Kansas City Chiefs lost quite a bit last offseason. They lost some this offseason, too. Dwayne Bowe might be a situation of addition by subtraction. But they lost their starting center, Rodney Hudson, a good player, and one that I don't know that they have a replacement for on the current roster. They did trade for Ben Grubbs, giving up a late-round pick. They signed Jeremy Maclin, one of Andy Reid's guys from back in Philadelphia, to Kansas City. So, obviously, they've instantly upgraded the wide receiver position after Maclin had a really nice 2014. Most certainly is an upgrade over Dwayne Bowe. This is a team that still has holes in some key areas. Now, what are their needs in terms of the 2015 NFL Draft? Well, first and foremost, their need is a quarterback. I'm sorry. I don't know why so many people give so many free passes to Alex Smith. The guy just isn't that good. Just because he doesn't make a ton of mistakes, just because he doesn't do a ton of stupid things, doesn't mean that he's good. He's still not that good. He is nothing more than an average middle-of-the-road starter. And at the end of the day, the name of the game in the NFL is to win championships. And Alex Smith is not a championship type of quarterback. And henceforth, why the Kansas City Chiefs in his 2 years there have made one playoff appearance, and that was coming off of a season where they had a last-place schedule, and even they struggled to make it in that second half of the season. They blew that playoff game. You could say Smith played well. He did. But at the end of the day, you're not going much of anywhere with Alex Smith. They must find a young quarterback at some point in time. They're probably not going to address it in this year's draft, but at some point in time, that is the biggest need they have. Because you either have a quarterback or you don't. And the Chiefs just don't have a guy you can win a championship with in Alex Smith. I mean, it's that simple. The 49ers got rid of Alex Smith because of Colin Kaepernick. And they did that for a reason. And you've seen what Colin Kaepernick is. So what does that say about Alex Smith? Exactly. So what are their other needs? In terms of defense, they could use some depth, definitely at inside linebacker, especially with Derek Johnson coming off of a torn Achilles, but they even needed that be addressed before. They could use some depth at corner, that's for sure. But this draft is about offense. They need offense, 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 offense. They still need a lot of help at wide receiver. Yes, you've brought in Jeremy Maclin. Yes, you've got a weapon like DeAnthony Thomas that you could deploy all over the place. You've got a guy like Travis Kelce at tight end. You've got Jamal Charles coming out of the backfield with a nice compliment in Niall Davis. But you still need a lot more and a whole lot more outside. They could use 2 wide receivers in this draft. They could use a big-time physical number 1 type of wide receiver and a slot type of guy and a reliable weapon, the guy that can really work in that West Coast type of offense. But they also need help on that offensive line too, and that's where I would expect the Kansas City Chiefs to devote their first-round pick to. The reason I say that is when you look at wide receiver, you're talking about Andy Reid in that West Coast system, so his preference for wide receivers might not be the same as others because of the type of system they run, and he might look at those guys that can pick up yak. And he might look at certain guys and say, well, based off of what we run in our system, we can look at these guys more in the 3rd or 4th round than we need to in the 1st or 2nd round. They do need to address that offensive line, though. They need help at offensive tackle, and maybe somebody that could step in and take over the left tackle from Eric Fisher so that way you can flip him over to the right side or at least provide you a better option at right tackle. They could definitely use an upgrade at center because now they've lost Rodney Hudson. They could use some depth at guard. In terms of their philosophy, this draft needs to be about offense, 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 offense. In terms of their first-round pick, I know most mocks that are done are mocking a wide receiver to the Chiefs at 18 because that's a need, and that is their biggest need, and I don't dispute that. And I most certainly wouldn't knock the Kansas City Chiefs for addressing wide receiver in the first round because God knows they need to. But I also understand that this is Andy Reid, and longtime Eagles fans know exactly what I'm talking about is at the end of the day, this motherfucker loves drafting him some guys out of the trenches in the first round. Whether it's offense or defense, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, his default is going to be offensive or defensive line. That's the way it's always been with Andy Reid, and that's the way I always believe it's going to be. Even in 2013, when he came into the fold with the Chiefs, the first draft pick they had, number 1 overall pick, was Eric Fisher, an offensive lineman. Last year, they spent a first-round pick on a defensive edge rusher. This year, I expect them to go back to the trenches, and they need help there. You can talk about the weapons on the outside, but you got to have time. You got to be able to protect your quarterback. You got to give him more time. They could use some upgrades. They could use a better offensive line. They could use more young depth on that offensive line. I expect them to go tackle at number 18 or maybe center if they decide a guy like Cameron Irving is too good to pass up and too good of a fit for their system to risk missing out on. Otherwise, if they don't take Cameron Irving, I expect the pick to be somebody like an Andrews Pete. Maybe somebody like a Lyle Collins, whatever the best offensive tackle available is at number 18. Maybe somebody like a DJ Humphries from Florida if they fall in love with that type of guy. In terms of the wide receivers they might be looking at, if they were to look at one at number 18, that might be a bit of a problem because the guys like the Coopers and the Whites will be gone. Devontae Parker might be gone. Breshad Perryman might even be gone. It may be a little rich for guys like Jalen Strong or Devin Smith. So, again, you might be looking at round 2 or round 3. Receivers that I look at that might very well fit their system, a guy like Nelson Aguilar, who I doubt would be there for the 2nd-round pick, a guy like Justin Hardy, who might be there for the 3rd-round pick. Those are some of the wide receivers that I look at that could fit what Andy Reid wants to run on offense. To me, in order for this to be a successful draft, all 4 of their first picks need to be on the offensive side of the ball. They've got some major needs and some major areas of weakness there, whether it's offensive line or wide receiver. They need to draft 2 wide receivers and 2 offensive linemen with their first 4 picks. Otherwise, doing anything other than that is pretty much stupidity, unless they took a quarterback, and then that might be a different situation.